In fact, you know what? I'm going to start over. Hi, my name's Anthony Horvath. I'm the host of the Gutencast. And uh, you don't know this, but we deleted the first 15 minutes of this because of technical difficulties, which you still might encounter. My website is gutenbookpress.com. It's an online book retail website. My goal is to defeat Amazon. Not going so well so far, but you can help by going and buying a book or 5 or 50. That would be great. And on this podcast, I talk about whatever makes me happy. And books are things that make me happy. Ideas are things that make me happy. The things that are going on in my life, my many hobbies, and eventually we'll get to more of them. But I was 10 years on the local fire department, and I met a friend here, Pat Sousa, who is our guest tonight. He has 30 years on. So we're going to repeat some of the stuff that we said before, because otherwise no one's ever going to hear it, because I'm just going to delete that crap. So before we really get started, 30 years, both of us, we feel some sympathy, quite a bit of sympathy, really, for the death of those Idaho firefighters that are out there. I mean, when we come to a scene, I guess I should talk about myself in the past tense, but, you know, when you get to a scene, especially when you just arrive, it could be anything. Like, because what comes through on the dispatch is usually just for like their fragments that they've been able to gather from someone and spit it out to us. And what you actually see, it's not maybe like completely different, but it can be a lot different, right?
Yeah, it definitely can be. You know, the dispatchers are giving us the information that they have been able to get. A lot of times people on scene are hysterical. Um, I, man, I'm not sure that I could even put a percentage on the accuracy of what we're dispatched for versus getting there.
Yeah.
Finding exactly what they told us we were going to find, it's a small percentage, and it definitely is not dispatch's fault. You know, they work pretty hard at getting accurate information for us. Um, Many times there's law enforcement officers on scene, whether it's a fire, EMS calls. We see those guys in the middle of the night. I'm not sure, you know, exactly where they all come from, but um, many times they're on scene, you know, long before we get there.
Right. So those guys in Idaho, right? They think they're showing up to a wildfire, and they just start getting shot at.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and you just can't even really like imagine that scenario. And to me, that there more than one call that we responded to, I thought was on the sketchy side. You know, and I was always really thankful that in our area, and I assume this is true in lots of areas, but it's a rural area, so I don't know maybe what I expected, but law enforcement is almost always, you know, first on scene.
Right. Right.
You know, and that encourages me.
Yeah. From my perspective, I can't think of any calls that that really freaked me out. You know, this is it is a rural area. Um, um, People, for the most part, want to be left alone here.
Right.
It's sometimes not uncommon to not get a friendly welcome,
Mm-hmm.
but they are the ones that called us. So
Right.
I have never really felt scared or afraid. And a lot of that is due to the law enforcement, you know, typically being there beforehand.
Right.
Been in many homes where there's, you know, firearms present, sometimes more than one, sometimes a lot. I am a firearms owner myself, and I'm not scared. I recognize people's right to do what they want, and you know, I've never found it intimidating, and they have never made it intimidating toward me.
We must have responded to some different calls.
Yeah,
I'm not saying all of them,
right.
made me worried, but there were a couple. Yeah, I just don't know. Like, I'm looking at the tops of the trees or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. No, I guess what was going through my head was more EMS calls.
Yeah, okay.
And typically the middle of the night. Um, I can only think of one time when the fire department was called at the request of our sheriff's department to do a standby, and they had a dude that was not really sure how to accurately describe this. He was armed, and there were shots that were fired. Nobody really knows for sure. There were no officers harmed, no vehicles shot, nothing like that. But there was definitely gunfire, and it made them at least sit back and take note. But yeah, from my perspective, fire wise, you never know what to expect. Not real far from here, hour and a half away. I don't know if you remember this happening. It's got to be 6-7 years ago. There was a fire department that responded to a mutual aid call for another fire department, and a firefighter approaching the front of this house was shot. And they didn't really know what was going on at the time. I think the general assumption was there was someone inside. In fact, what had happened, there was a loaded firearm that was kept in a corner, propped up against a piece of furniture, and when that piece of furniture deteriorated enough, the firearm fell to the floor, and eventually it got hot enough to set off the round. So, completely accidental, not really a fault, but it's something that we all need to think about. But at the same time, we really can't be afraid. I can't be afraid every time I walk up to a door that a gun is going to tip over and I'm going to be, shot by it. Yeah. We would never get anything done.
Right. So, JB, you let me know if you ever think that something has deteriorated so much with the sound that I really should fix it. I can see the chat for where I'm at. While we're thanking people like law enforcement for showing up and being our initial eyes and ears on the ground, as it were, our family members too had to make quite a bit of sacrifices, right? With calls coming in the middle of the morning or on holidays and just messing stuff up.
All hours of the day and night. You cannot predict when these things are going to happen. I think my wife and my kids and my family and my neighbors. I'm surrounded by the perfect group of people in my world, and I'm incredibly thankful for that.
Yeah, we probably could do a whole podcast on the impacts of the first responder services on family members. I can imagine, I'm not being on EMS side myself, but I can imagine there are a lot of times there'll be calls that you might get on that leave a mark in your mind, and you're not really at liberty to share that with anyone. You just have to carry it, but they still know, right?
Yeah. Early on, we could talk with our spouses at a little bit of length, and now with HIPAA, we don't really dare say anything or elaborate, but my wife has been with me long enough. She knows. She can tell, probably more by my silence and my body language, whether it was a tough one or not.
Yep.
you know, she's always been fantastic about supporting me through that, you know. She knows that I can't talk about it. She doesn't pressure me, you know. But I do know that it affects her when we get those calls in the middle of the night. Honestly, some of them I would have slept right through if it wasn't for the gentle elbow to the bruised ribs.
Yeah.
And
Gentle.
then, yeah. Then the next thing is, you know, a kiss on the cheek and you know, telling me to be safe. And I'm going to do everything that I can, but I can't predict,
Right.
you know, what
Yeah.
other things could happen.
Yeah.
So I know that she does worry about me. I get that.
Right.
I really do.
So let's let people learn a little bit more about you. You've been on the Greenwood Fire Department for more than 30 years. Also EMS for almost as long, right?
Right. I joined the fire department in 1992. I come from a farm family, and I have had several brothers that farmed dairy farms, and my one brother, I helped all summer long put hay up in his barn, and we got done with you know, probably the most hay that we had ever put in that barn, and the next day he had a barn fire. I was not on the department then. I was there before the fire department got there, and I can remember watching all of this chaos go on, and thinking, you know, why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? Why
Right.
can't they work faster? And I know all of these guys. You know, this is a small community. Everybody knows everybody for the most part, or at least back then we did. And I'm watching these guys, and it dawned on me that they are doing everything that they possibly can, that they physically can. You know, as hard as they worked, as hard as they tried, there just wasn't going to be a positive outcome out of that. You know, in the end, buildings are just buildings, cars are just cars. My brother was able to recover from that barn fire, and you know, went on to farm there for a number of years. After that, because I recognized, you know, what was going on, my father-in-law actually was on the fire department, and I asked him, you know, what do I need to do? You know, back then, raise your right hand and say I'm a firefighter, and you're pretty much in.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to downplay the training, the schooling. I don't even know how many hours of training I've been through. I'm gonna say, you know, 1,000, 2,000. I have no idea. It's ongoing.
Right.
We train twice a month. You know, multiply that alone by the 30 plus years, and the experience. You know, the schooling, the training that they do in school, that can only take you to a certain level, and after that, you know, it's the experience, the things that you learn at fires, and
Right.
paying attention to, you know, what everybody is doing, and what happens if you do this, or what happens if you do that, you know.
But you do bring up you raise a misconception that people might have in their mind, like that a volunteer firefighter might not receive training, and I know it depends on the state, of course, but actually, to my knowledge, in Wisconsin, the volunteer firefighters get basically the same training as the professional.
Right.
They don't have that in the field experience that provides so much more, you know, useful stuff, we'll say.
Right.
But as far as like the formal training or whatnot, you're going to be trained. Also, volunteer firefighters get paid as well. You know, so it's not a lot of
Right.
money, but
Right. We do. We are a paid volunteer service.
Yeah.
There are 100% volunteers in Wisconsin. we are fortunate, the little bit that we do make. For me, it pays for a fishing trip every year.
Yeah.
So there is something, but there are places that are 100% volunteer.
Yeah. But to kind of bring it back around to your story about how you got involved, one of the differences is, like in the city, I would imagine that a lot of people just take it for granted that when they call 911, cops going to show up fast.
Right.
Fire department will show up within 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Right.
Out here in the rural area, though, you can't take that for granted. The police officers are career guys, but if people don't volunteer for the fire department, ain't no one showing up.
Right. Exactly.
And you can't make them. The communities can't afford, a paid service.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. Just our entire operating budget would get sucked up by hiring probably 4 or 5 individuals
Right.
with benefits.
Yeah.
And that is nowhere near enough to cover 24/7. I have responded to one of the further corners of the area, and there was a family member there that was not happy about our response time, and really interfering with the care of their loved one. And I took them aside, and I wanted the EMTs to be able to do their thing, and I politely let him know that we are volunteers. We were at home sleeping.
Right.
It's 2:30 in the morning.
Right.
You wake up at 2:30 in the morning, get dressed in some sort of,
Make sure you get both socks on.
Right. Exactly. And then respond to the station where the rig is at, and then finally respond to, wherever it is that you're going. And in
Right.
this case, we're 15 miles plus.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, our particular area, obviously, if you're in town, in the city of Greenwood itself proper, you're going to be fine. But there's a no man's land out to the west. Very bad cell phone service,
Right.
bad repeater service too. A lot of times
Right.
for us,
yeah.
and it just takes a long time to get out there, no matter what.
It really does. That EMS call, I basically went through out loud with this family member, approximately how many minutes it took for me to get out of bed, get dressed, get in a vehicle, go to the station. We do not have lights and sirens on our personal vehicles. We
Right.
cannot break the law, traffic law.
Yep.
So we need to be, reasonable and prudent getting to the station. I went through that timeline with them, and when I tallied up the numbers, I told them, I said, it appears, like we actually made really good time tonight,
Right.
because I got here 3 minutes faster than that scenario that I just took you through.
Right.
So
Yeah. So I hope my guests are appreciating. My viewers are appreciating my guest. You heard how nice he was when describing his interaction with this family member, and how he laid it out so calmly and peacefully. I'm sure he sometimes gets animated, but I don't think I've ever seen it really in the course of us carrying out our duties. And he was always so level-headed, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong on the fire scene. And I don't know if I ever saw you, Pat, get. Is there a message I need to see?
Well, actually, one of my family members just sent me a very nice text, and she's actually watching on Roku and
Okay.
Facebook, and she said there is no echo. So,
Excellent. Ask her.
but when she pulled it up on her phone, there was a lot of echo.
Oh, weird. So ask her to. I'm pretty sure that I'm coming through pretty well, but I turned you down because I thought my voice was coming through your microphone. But hopefully you are coming through okay as well. Are they giving you grief also? Are they making fun of you?
No. Actually, she was pointing out the fact that there is currently a bridge that's being replaced right at the city limits. Tony and I talked about this previously.
Right. Yeah.
So our response time to these remote areas that we're talking about actually takes even longer now. And she just tells me that we both sound good.
Wow. It's like a small miracle. And it's lucky the cat isn't here. But if the cat does show up again, I am ready. We have this cat spray. I cannot even tell you how much.
I need some of that for people.
No, I'll put it over here.
Another family member just said she's watching on her computer, and she said that you are echoing.
Well, as long as it's long as it is tolerable, we're just going to go on. Otherwise, we'll never get it. There must be something strange happening with them. So I have, this is what I'm using to actually control the broadcast, my phone, but it's actually connecting to the main computer. And this was my solution rather than having someone sit at my computer and click buttons for me. So I don't know. For all I know, it's this new program that I got on here.
Tolerable, I hear.
Okay, tolerable.
My peeps.
All right, yeah. Well, you know, tolerable pretty much describes how my wife views our entire marriage. So let's just say I'm used to it. I'm probably gonna hear.
I gotta say I'm blessed all the way around. Yeah. My wife and I were high school sweethearts, and we have never left that. Definitely, she definitely makes my life easier.
So let's not to rain on that tender moment or anything.
Right.
We should
work to do.
I know we should round that out because we probably will have some locals who are watching this, or will watch it later.
Sure.
And with that bridge being out, like the response time, which was already rough to get out to like Rock Dam or whatever, is obviously a lot more. Like would you even have like advice besides, you know, hey, when you call 911, try to be patient? Like, what do you think people should like make preparations or whatever?
You know, honestly, certainly, you know, the people at Rock Dam and those far-reaching areas, I think they already understand that they're out there. You know, that's the price that you pay for living in God's country. The people that it's going to be the biggest shock to are probably the people that are living on the immediate opposite side of the bridge.
Yeah, right.
Because they're used to a 2-minute response time once we leave the station. And I actually work on the opposite side of the bridge, and I went from driving like 2.5 miles every day to 14 one way.
Right.
So, you know, there's a good 10-12 minutes extra, you know, just to get to that same point. So they may be the ones that would notice or maybe have you know, more of an issue with us having a slower response. Mm-hmm. I don't want to make excuses, you know. It's not really an excuse, it's reality. I mean, it's going to be really nice when it's done.
Yeah, right.
But, you know, at this point, it is what it is.
There were a couple times there with the bridge when it was known that it was coming down, and I don't know if this is accurate, but this is like my recollection that they kept lowering the weight limit.
Yeah.
But there was still a time where we were taking the water trucks over, called tenders.
Right.
And I think I was only driving it twice over that period of time. But the weight limit went down once, and I was like, you know, I just don't feel comfortable right now doing this.
Right. So I think in the you know a general in general, it's possible on the old bridge to have, you know, as many as say 4 trucks on there at the same time, and if each of those trucks were maxed out, That weight capacity obviously is beyond, where the bridge is at. The reality of it is, probably the most you're ever going to see on that at one time is 2.
Yeah.
So when they lowered the weight limit, they did give, DOT engineers did give permission for our fire department to cross it one at a time. We had very specific rules that we had to follow. We had to stop before the bridge, send somebody on the opposite side to stop
Yeah.
traffic. I think we couldn't cross it faster than 10 miles an hour or something.
Yeah.
There were rules. So when the weight limit was reduced, that's why we still had that option available to us. Because keeping in mind, even though it was posted at, 20 ton and then it dropped down to 10 ton, I mean, 10 ton, you're talking a heavy duty pickup and a gooseneck
Right.
trailer.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
So that might be a probably not something in your notes. I should make a comment about your notes, Pat. So Pat jotted down some notes and of things that he thought would be fun to cover or talk about or whatever. And so before the broadcast, he handed them to me, and I looked at them, and I tried hard to understand them, and I could not. Like,
to be fair, some of this I'm having a problem reading. I drank way too much coffee before
when you were writing that.
Well, while I was writing this, I was still drinking coffee.
Yeah. So I don't think this is on your list, but I couldn't possibly know.
Right.
But one of the things that I don't think people appreciate, I'm sure people who have been here a long time certainly understand. We have to bring our own water with us most of the time.
Right.
Like in the city, you can just assume they're gonna show up, hook up the hose,
Right.
and they're gonna go. And that's not the case for us. And I assume that actually most of the volunteer departments in the rural areas
Right.
across the country are the same way.
Not everywhere. I have had family members living in North Dakota, and I have family members that live in Missouri, and in the rural area they have rural water. And it's out their ways. I have no idea.
What do you mean they have like
It's-
fire hydrants?
Correct. Yeah.
Really?
There is piping.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I have no idea. I'm sure it was some government grant of some sort, and there may be places in Wisconsin that are like that, but not here. So the hydranted areas basically are the city of Greenwood. Beyond that, we have to haul our own water unless they conveniently have a pond that we
Right.
can draw out of, but we can't count on that.
Yeah.
So in the rural areas, many times, and this is not unique to us. All the departments in Clark County deal with this, where we use mutual aid, and mutual aid is other departments that basically send whatever we request, really.
Right.
But most often it's water.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can sometimes measure kind of back of the hand estimate how bad the fire was by the number of water trucks and
Right.
from how far they had to come
Yeah.
to serve it. Oh, there's 30 trips made. Oh, that was a big one.
Yeah, a good mutual aid call for us is if we have to take our water truck 25 miles away,
Yeah,
and we
right.
don't dump any water. That's a good call.
Right. Yeah, which has happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but piggybacking on that, one of the things that we need to do early is call for mutual aid. If there's any information that comes to us, through dispatch or through an officer on scene or one of our people on scene, if there is any inkling that it's going to be, or has the potential to be, something big,
Right.
we need to call as soon as possible.
Right.
And I am more than happy to drive our water truck 25 miles and not dump any water. I'd much
Yeah.
rather have that than they wait a half an hour and then they need a lot more water, and we're there halfway through the next day.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Yeah. So this line of discussion we might have to guard our language just a little bit and how we describe it. But like in the city, I'm assuming I don't know how the cities are structured. My impression is that like a 3-alarm fire would be like the equivalent of us having to bring in 3 cities. Is that kind of
so we use Mavis system. It's a mutual aid box alarm. It originally was developed in California. Actually, if you've watched the fireman show, and I'm trying to think of the name of it, that was like in the 70s and 80s. They were using the mutual aid box alarm system back then. The object of that is that you don't want to deplete one station of all of its resources.
Right.
So they'll grab an engine from this department and a water truck from that department, and maybe another truck from another department, or whatever resource they're asking for. So
the reason why I put guardrails already kind of in the statement is like when the city, you've got all these departments that are career guys, they can get together and train together a lot. Out here, if you've got like mutual aid going on and you got 6 different municipalities coming in, like everyone just kind of gets in there, and it's
Right.
like controlled chaos. Everyone knows what to do kind of, but now you have to work with other people that you don't know anything about.
that we don't normally work with.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's true. It happens. We have had some big incidents, where literally every department in the county was at that incident. I was at the requesting end of that at one call. One point, I had to make a call, and the last thing you want to do is wish that you had made the call. I made the call hoping that we wouldn't need it, and we ended up not needing it. We were able to send literally everybody back home without the need of assistance. We have a large processing plant that's within our area, and there was a situation going on there at the plant that if things didn't go the way they went, we could have been looking at mass evacuation. I
Right,
mean, we could
right.
be, I don't even know, at that moment time how many people were working in the plant. My guess would be 100, 150. But they may be scattered throughout the plant, and we're going to need manpower just to
Yeah.
find everybody
Right.
and account for them. So
Yeah.
better to have it not need it than need it and not
Right.
have it.
So let me take an opportunity here to invite people to post questions or comments in the chat. I am able to monitor that chat. I don't know. Do you have it up on yours? Are you able to see the chat?
I cannot see that.
Well, don't worry about it if you can't. I'll just relay it.
You can
if it
send me
comes through.
text messages if you
Right,
want, guys,
yeah.
and I can hand Tony my phone and we'll make
Yeah.
it work.
And so
We're firemen. We're
that's right.
professionals.
So you can post your questions or comments, and we will work them in. If you're just joining us, that I am aware that there are some intermittent sound issues. I don't know why. I'm blaming the cat because I need to blame something. It can't possibly be me. But this is actually only the 3rd time that I've done an in-studio thing with 2 mics like this. So it's a work in progress.
He bought special equipment just for me.
I know, yeah. Well, let's not get too carried away. But let's say, I didn't buy a lot of top end stuff, and that might also be kind of the problem here too. But anyway, questions or comments, please put them in there, and we'll get to them. So I see that you're looking at your list. I'm still frankly amazed that you can even read it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and
I'm
what's
picking
something
through it.
that's on it that you'd like to talk about?
Um, one of the things, we I want to tell a war story, but I'm not going to talk about anything terrible. Um, we have been dispatched to house fires where there are people inside, and as a responder, your heart starts to race, and you're getting into your equipment so that when you get on scene, you can jump out of the truck and go in there and do what you need to do to get these people out. We get there, and there's no smoke present. That was the first thing that I noticed. There's lights on in the home, and clearly you can see in there, and there's doesn't appear to be any smoke inside the house. Um, we walk in the living room, and there's people sitting on the couch watching TV, and I'm like, are we at the are we at the right place? What's going on? And they're like, oh, down the hall, casually, and I'm beside myself. I'm like, this is like the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And to be fair, I've seen that twice. So we went into a bedroom that was a child's bedroom. And one of the things that I just wanted to mention, one of the things that I have seen multiple causes of fires, a lava lamp.
Hmm.
If you have a lava lamp in your house, throw it out. Um,
That's just great. Now I'm going to be sued by the lava lamp manufacturers. This podcast is going to be torpedoed before I even get to
there
episode
goes your
50.
sponsorship from the
That's
lava
right.
lamp company. Outlet strips are another culprit. Um, I have seen neither one of those. Well, the outlet strip, to be fair, actually did cause a fire. The lava lamp did not. It just overheated the cord, and it burnt like a black streak up the wall to where the outlet was. Um,
And they called for that?
yeah.
I mean, once you saw it, did you say, well, I'm glad you called? Or
If it were me in my house, I definitely would not have.
Yeah, okay.
I'd have taken the thing and thrown it outside and
Right.
been mad because now I got this char mark on my,
Yeah.
on my wall. But I have seen two of those do that same thing. Where there is smoke, there isn't always fire. And this proved to be evident at another fire we went to. Same deal. People sitting in the living room watching TV. I was blown away. I'm like, what? And they're like, oh, downstairs. Open up the basement door. Sure enough, there's smoke. Couldn't see a thing. Went down there. Really prior to thermal imaging, and that was something I wanted to talk about anyway, was technological advances. From when I first got on, we didn't have anything like that.
Yeah.
You literally are in the dark, you're walking around blind in a house that is not yours. You don't know the path to here or there.
Right.
So I go down in the basement, and I'm searching for something that's on fire. What I found was an ice cream pail melted to the floor, that evidently just through the process of melting gave off smoke because it wasn't burning. But it just crazy things like that. Smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. Just wanted to say a few things about those. um, we went to, well, I've seen this happen a couple of times. We went to a house fire. People got out. Everything was fine. Their house sustained major damage, and we were in the late stages of being there, and basically doing mop up, cleanup, making sure that everything was out before we left. And throughout that entire time, there was this really annoying sound that none of us could really figure out where it was coming from or what it is that's making this obnoxious sound. We ended up finding it underneath some debris on the floor. It was a smoke detector that had previously been mounted on the ceiling that obviously was going off. Like I said, the people got out of their home. The smoke detector fell to the floor and literally melted itself into the floor. And it was making all kinds of noise, none of which sounded like a smoke detector, but I couldn't believe the thing was still working.
Uh-huh.
It blew my mind. Smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors save lives. Anybody that tells you different is just, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way.
So, not that I'm arguing with you, because I'm not an argumentative kind of guy, but for like a carbon monoxide situation,
Right.
I know that I think that I once, when we first moved here, with the previous chief, our carbon monoxide detector started going off, and my neighbor was might still be on the department. Actually, I'm not really sure what his status is. So I called him. I said, "Do I call the fire department for this?" He said, "Well, I'll just call the chief." And he actually gave me the number of the chief. He called the chief. Chief gave the number. So we don't really respond to that anymore. Whatever it was, I think it's different. Like if it's a multi-unit kind of thing. I don't really know the history of it, but the bottom line really, if your carbon monoxide detector is going off, get out.
Err on the side of caution.
But get out.
Right.
Like don't
right.
sit in there and wait, for the fire department in your living room. Get out.
Yeah, we have equipment to test air quality. Basically, we calibrate it outside according to clean air, and then we enter the building. One of the things with carbon monoxide detectors, usually the first thing that happens when those start going off, people open up their doors and their windows and things like that.
Right.
It may have taken hours for that carbon monoxide to build up to that point to set that detector off. So when we get there, it's no longer going off. Our machine is not picking up on anything.
Right.
And I'm not saying we want you to stay in there and leave your carbon monoxide detector go off. That's one of those things we have found. Carbon monoxide is a product of combustion. So it comes from LP,
Right.
burning appliances, natural gas, wood, things like that. And we have found things. In the old days, they used to vent them through the chimneys. Brick chimney, stone chimney. And typically there's a smaller pipe that goes from the appliance into the chimney. We found things like birds and squirrels and sometimes as small as they are, as insignificant as it seems, there's just enough blockage there to cause incomplete combustion, and that causes the situation that's happening.
Is that your phone buzzing? Are more people sending live commentary to you?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
okay.
Yeah.
So, this is coming from my sister.
Okay.
When we were having our discussion or a reference about the bridge, she commented, "Don't set off fireworks in a dry field."
Hey, there's a smart thing.
Yeah. That's a solid move. Just to let you know, Kathy, it's been raining here like every other day for. It's been a while. I saw a guy starting on what looked like an arc the other day. The next answer to the burning question was the name of that fire show that I was talking about from the 70s and 80s, Emergency Squad 51.
Oh, that's what JB said that.
Yep.
But I didn't know what the context was, and so I thought he had to run to the bathroom.
So she's got, there's a bunch of stuff here.
Yeah, okay.
I'll just go right down the line and hit them all. Have you ever had to rescue a cat from a tree? Ironically, that is actually something I was going to write down. The almost 33 years I've been doing this, I have never been called to a cat in a tree.
Interesting.
I had heard of a law enforcement agency not far from here that was called to a cat in a tree, and they were trying to be helpful and get the cat down, and they used a beanbag round, and unfortunately, It didn't end well. I'm just gonna leave that one alone. How often have you had to return to a call because it reignited?
They call that
It,
warranty work.
warranty work, right? It actually it happens a lot more than we would like it to. The reality is when we're there on scene, again, it kind of goes back to everybody being volunteers. Maybe being late for work. We should have been at work 3 hours ago, and here we are, babysitting this soggy mess. If there's no, we use our thermal imager today. We haven't had any that I can think of, in recent times. But I can remember several that reignited that we had to go back to. But we do everything that we possibly can. But the reality is we just can't sit there.
Yeah, right.
24 hours a day for the next 2 days to make sure it doesn't reignite.
Well, and back to the water issue. I mean, like, it's not like you could just sit there with the fire hydrant on a lot of these. So, like, if you think it's out, right, and all the indications are it's out, it's not like it's as simple to say, well, let's just throw another 3,000 gallons on it, because that might mean calling another 3 trucks in.
Right.
And that's like another 2 hours possibly, depending where they are.
Yeah. Her next question is, what's the hardest kind of fire to extinguish? There are 2 that come to mind. Thankfully, so far we haven't really had to deal with either one of these. The first one is magnesium fires. Vehicle manufacturers for a while were using magnesium in the front ends. One manufacturer had it in the grill. Wheels, magnesium wheels.
Right, yeah.
There was a manufacturing plant in Eau Claire that had a fire. Oh man, that's got to be 20 years ago. You can't put it out with water. The best you can do is well, let me take that back. You can put it out with enough water. In this manufacturing plant, what they ended up doing was having the local gravel company haul in sand, and they literally used dump truck loads of sand. They dumped over the top of the fire with another piece of equipment, and they smothered it. That's how they got it out. The second hardest kind of fire to extinguish is lithium batteries. Lithium batteries burn through a chemical process. They can process their own oxygen to sustain fire.
Right.
So they literally can burn underwater.
Thermal runaway, right?
Right. There's not a lot of electric cars, and I have seen videos on the internet of electric cars burning. To be completely honest, I have gone through electric vehicle training, and their suggestion, honestly, is to let it burn. That's the most environmentally friendly way to handle it. There are companies out there that sell blankets, and they say that you can put these blankets over them and put them out. I think that's been proven to not be the case.
Just to clarify, like for a lithium battery, they think.
Yeah.
I mean, that might work for a grease fire, but why would anyone think it would work for a lithium battery?
Right. The videos that I've seen online, electric vehicles, there's a differential here. Is the vehicle burning because of the battery, or is it the other way around? The EV training that I went through, our instructor was showing us live videos of electric vehicles that were on fire. The reality was it was actually inside the car. It had nothing to do with the battery. At some point it could involve or cause the battery to, become part of the issue.
Yeah.
But if they can get that fire put out before that happens, that's best case scenario. Like I said, thankfully, a little bit of magnesium. I can remember, some of you may have seen the video going around on one of the online platforms. a firefighter spraying water at a vehicle and all kinds of sparks shoot back at them, that's magnesium fire. And yeah, electricity and water do not mix.
No. So I should have mentioned it earlier when it would have made more sense, but it's hard for me to read the name without a Jane Brown.
Yep, that's my other sister.
Okay, she was also complimentary of carbon monoxide detectors. So thank you for your comment, Jane. So with the amount of time that you have been on department, you talked about technology, but
Right.
you share stories about how back then they used to have beer in the fridge too.
Oh yeah, yeah. That we had we had two fridges.
Earthquake.
One had beer in it. I mean the whole thing, you know. And you know, I we have progressed to a point in society where it's no longer acceptable to do that. Our current station has never had any kind of alcohol in it. It's just not something that's accepted anymore. One of our instructors actually came from the Dakotas, and he said the department he was on back then, they would literally pull the fire trucks out of their fire station. They'd stop in front of the bar and run in and, you know, grab a case on the way out of town because they didn't know when they were going to be back, you know, so somebody might get thirsty.
Yeah. But of course, we can drink here right now if you want. So if you wanted to take a moment to help yourself to a drink, you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, technological advancements. So I talked earlier about thermal imaging. That one is huge. Our department has 2 thermal image cameras right now. We a lot of times, many times, we have both of them out. We're using them. The equipment that we wear, when I first joined the department, there were other departments, neighboring departments, that had basically a rubber coat and boots that went all the way up.
Yeah.
You know, they were like sort of like hip waders. Really completely useless equipment as far as entering into into a building. Probably protect them pretty good against the water, but that was it. That was
Right.
That was the amount of protection that those guys had. And those things were hot. My time on the department, you know, I've had several changes of gear. The stuff today, it seems like it gets lighter, it fits better, it's more comfortable, it's still hot. But I can remember back to the early days, even the fire hose itself, huge advancement. If we had a fire during the wintertime, the best you could not roll a hose up. The best you could do was, you know, fold it up enough to get it in the back of a pickup truck to get it back somewhere warm, you know, thawed out. And
Well,
you know,
explain to people why that is. So the
yeah, the old hose was a real thick, heavy canvas material, and it just didn't bend well. It was hard to work with. It was
so you
heavy.
got a 100-foot canvas
Right.
that's wet, and now
Right.
it's frozen,
Right.
and somehow you're gonna like manipulate
Yeah,
that.
and we still have that, you know, with modern hose. I mean that it's going to get wet, but for the most part, it's pliable enough that if we need to, we can roll it back up and
Yeah.
you know, get it in the back of a pickup truck and put it somewhere warm and thaw it out and start all over again.
So one of the areas that I well, let me start with personal experience. Like some of my, well, it doesn't really matter. One of the things that really stood out to me for a lot of the fires that I was at was just how loud a fire is. Like if it's a barn fire,
Right.
I mean, it's just an overwhelm. It's like fireworks are loud, right? But they like ebb and flow and they go away. And
Right.
this is like a sustained
It's
wall.
a droning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And communication with the other firefighters, it's just a pain when you're wearing the masks. And
Yeah.
I know that they have some expensive innovations that are coming down their way that our
Right.
department did not avail themselves of.
Right. Right.
But like you may as well just use sign language.
Right. Yeah. You know, the early masks were extremely hard to talk in, and when you did, you sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it was terrible at best.
Right. So the last ones that we had the little speakers on it.
Right.
What the new ones? They have also amplifiers of some kind, right? I don't remember.
The voice quality is better or as good as what those speakers
Right.
were. You know,
It's still not.
it's still not great.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
A little bit of Charlie Brown's teacher. You know,
Right.
wah, wah, wah,
Yeah.
wah, wah. What did he say? Wah,
Yeah.
uh-oh. You know.
And it's one of those things that, I don't know what the career guys were, but I always thought people would get more annoyed with each other, and maybe they did. I mean, you couldn't really see, right? You know,
Right. That's why we started putting our names on our jackets, because we couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Oh, who's that guy? I don't know.
but it's just so hard to coordinate when you and talk to people, explain what the situation is, or what you got to do. And I would think that people would get even more angry with each other, but I never really saw that.
Yeah, yeah. You know, there's all kinds of different personalities and we're not unique. This is every department everywhere. You have a dynamic of people. You're going to have people that, do stuff at work. They do stuff after work. And then you're going to have the people that don't talk to anybody at work and they don't want to talk to anybody after work.
Right.
But, as a whole, I think, especially with volunteers, we all recognize that we need to work together. The reason that we're here is it has nothing to do with you and I. If we didn't like each other, you're just going to have to get over that. And that's a quality that I like to see in people. Get over it, move on. I have been angry, and one of the things that I always try and do, especially if I recognize it, I'm sure there have been times when I was completely oblivious and didn't realize that I was acting in a way that offended somebody. But I usually do. I try and pride myself on not being a jerk. I think that as a leader, and having a lot of experience, I think that everybody needs to know what I know, and with that, I have to be a teacher, and not just once in a while. I have to be a teacher every time I'm out there. And one of the things I hear from the new people, how do you stay so calm? I may look calm on the outside, but those of us that have had hamsters or know somebody that has a hamster, that's what's going on inside my head. But the training, you have to trust your training, and the one thing that you have to do is figure out a way to remain calm.
Yeah.
Sometimes people would come to me as an officer. Sometimes people would come to me with a question. What do you think about this? And before I could answer that question, two other people would come up to me with two different questions. Sometimes I'd just have to put up my hand and, basically I'm processing the first question.
Right.
And I, as best as I can, I want to make the right decision so that we don't have to go through something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to think that most of the time I, did a good job making an informed decision. But I know it was tough for the other people standing there. They're like, come on, I need to know. I need to know.
Yeah.
Sometimes the reality is, if you need to take another 15 or 20 seconds on the fire side, if you need to take 15 or 20 seconds to think about it, think it through, process it a little bit, you're way better off doing that. That 20 seconds you're
Yeah.
going to gain back,
Right.
tenfold by doing the right thing versus, oh, geez, we should have done this. Well, now it just cost you 10 minutes
Right.
instead of 10
Right.
seconds. EMS side, there are times when you can do that, and there are times when you can't. And that's an experience thing too. We have a lot of good people, a lot of dedicated people, people that have been part of this, some of them as long as I have in one facet or another, not necessarily on the department, but just having medical training, nurses and folks like that. They know what they're doing. There isn't anybody on my department that I wouldn't trust, to take care of me if there was an incident going on. So,
which speaks really highly of the department, because
it does. There's a mutual respect there. And you have to have that. Like I said, even if there are personalities that clash when you're involved in an incident, whatever it is, fire or EMS, we need to work together for the betterment of the person, the individual, or whatever the situation is. We got to work through this. We got to make this work.
So you're 30 years in, and you've never been the chief, right?
Correct. I early on, again, going back to the barn fire and seeing, I'm going to call them the old guys. I hope they don't take offense to that, because I am that guy right now. Well, maybe not quite, but I'm really, most days I feel like it.
Uh-huh.
I moved up through the ranks pretty quickly. I was lieutenant and then captain and eventually assistant chief. And I got to a point where our chief was stepping down, and there certainly was opportunity for me to become chief. The chief position has changed in the time that I've been on, from being the guy that's in charge of the firefighters to being the guy that has to spend hours and hours at the station writing reports and satisfying state fire reporting guidelines. That
makes me want to drink just thinking about it.
I'm starting to think this is looking pretty good over here. That's not me. I am not that guy. I definitely, that is not who I am. And honestly, the current chief that we have, that is exactly who he is. He can do that better than anybody that I know. And to be honest, the duties that I perform, and since that time I actually stepped back from assistant chief. I'll get to that in a minute. But the duties that I performed as assistant chief were really what I wanted to do anyway.
Right.
I'm the let's go get dirty guy.
Yeah.
I once had a boss that told me he didn't expect me to do anything he wasn't willing to do himself. And he jumped right in there and showed me, on that job, how to do it. And lead by example, really. Now I have people that I train that are now training the new people. I stepped back from being assistant chief because I thought it was time, honestly. I had been in that position, I'm going to say over 20 years. I felt like I had sort of gotten to a point where maybe I was holding some of these people back that deserved a chance, deserved a shot, at a leadership role. In some ways, what I do hasn't changed a whole lot. I'm still that guy that anybody can come to and ask me a question. I don't belittle anybody for asking questions. The only dumb question is the one that you don't ask. That's
no one believes that.
I do.
Do you really?
I do. For me,
Okay.
there are no dumb questions. You can ask me anything.
All right.
I may laugh, but I'm going to answer your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So really a lot of my role on the department, I actually run the pump a lot more now
Right.
than I did before. But I am still that guy that anybody can come to. And something that just popped in my head. I am the longest running guy currently on the department, meaning that all the other ones that were there before me have since left.
Yeah. You're the guy.
Time wise,
Right.
you know, there we had a firefighter that was on for 65 years, and we lost him, a few years back to cancer. And great guy. I knew him pretty much my whole life, and he had 65 years on the
You're
department.
not going to break that record.
No. I mean, let's see. I got to do some math here.
Yeah.
I'd have to put in another 32 years just to get to where he was.
Right.
And if he hadn't been taken from us, honestly, he'd probably still be on the department. That's another thing I just want to touch on real quick. Being volunteers, they're the full-time guys. They have physical fitness and blah blah blah, and you got to pass this and you got to pass that, and it kind of is still what I talked about earlier, what I said earlier. I want to be a firefighter. Okay, hold up your right hand, say I'm a firefighter. You're in. The reality is on the volunteer side that there is a use for everyone. He may not have been able to do a lot of the physical things, but there were still things that he could do, and he did well. And we have a couple other members on the department that they're doing everything they can, and I'm thankful to have them. I have responded. Actually, the 65-year guy, we had a call one time during the day, and this kind of goes to what started, the idea behind this podcast was the need for volunteers, the need for people to step up. We had a call, and he and I were the only ones that showed up at the station. Mm-hmm. We literally, thankfully, we have rural responders, people that came from their jobs and responded right to the scene. We have people that responded directly and were there, met us when we got there. But on the way out, he's like, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? And I think by that point, I had already called for mutual aid to bring water. Right. I mean, if there's nobody to drive the water trucks, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
The best that we can do sometimes is use the little bit of water that we have, unless it's a really small fire, to not worry about putting it out. Just worry about calming it down enough to hold it so it doesn't advance, doesn't get any worse, and use that to buy time until our other help can get there. And I call that putting it on the water stretcher. But we talked on the way out, what do we do if it's just you and I out there? And I told him, I said, I'll set up the pump, and the only thing I need you to do is keep an eye on things. I'm going to take the hose and I'm going to go after it, Thankfully, we didn't have to do it that way. I have heard others say that they have had to do that. One of them was one of the instructors from Tech College, the department that he was on. It was just him and one other guy, and that's what they did. They set up the truck, and he went inside, and you do what you have to do. Nobody wants to put themselves in danger. I'm sure, at some point somebody's going to be watching this video and they're going to say, "Oh, that cowboy, he doesn't know what he's talking about." Yeah, come and live out here for a while. Right. You'll get educated. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've done it. I've been there, and I don't want to downplay the proper way for doing things.
Right.
But
but then there's some things you can only do if you have the manpower,
correct,
like a RIT team,
right?
Rapid intervention team, I think. Right.
Yep.
So people know what that is. Like probably all of the career departments have a a group of firefighters that are set aside to be ready, but otherwise do nothing unless somebody is in danger, and then they're going to go in. And we can't have 4 guys just sitting around doing nothing.
Right. We may only have 4 guys.
Right.
The 4 guys that we have may be the guys that are in there right now. There's a there's a risk reward thing. I talked earlier about buildings and vehicles. They're just that. They're just material things. What's important is life.
Yep.
That's really bottom line. We don't want to see anybody lose their house. I'm not going to downplay that.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. But if there's only 4 of us, we can only do what we can do.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of in that spirit, I think that well, I have a number of thoughts. Like, one of the things, to go back to that 65-year vet guy, one of the things that I never even really thought about before I joined was just how much work cleanup was.
Yeah.
Just to clean up.
Right.
Because you not have to get 99% of your equipment ready before you go home.
Right.
So if you've been up for 6 to 8 hours working a fire and you get back, it's still, you got to get it ready, because you might get called
exactly
1 second after. And
yeah,
the more the merrier for cleanup.
Right. Definitely. In some situations it took us hours to dirty that equipment.
Yeah.
And sometimes takes hours to clean it up. There are different dynamics. Mud is something none of us like to deal with. Snow and ice, for those locally, just to let you know, we do have spare hose that's all set up, ready to go to outfit a complete truck for both of our engines. So if we had both engines out and both hoses were laid out on the floor to dry, that truck is going to be restocked with hose that's ready to go. It's just that much more work, you know?
Yeah. So I wanted to, on top of that story, just kind of like, if we're thinking about people who might consider joining a volunteer fire department, you're on 30 years. Other people, I mean, he was on 65. He's making everyone look bad, right?
Right.
I feel like it's one of those things, especially in the rural areas, and it does not just apply to the first responders. It could be a lot of things. Everyone should take a turn. Do your part. Take a part of your life, and whether it's school board. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to broaden it out. Right. It could be a lot of different things, because what happens is that everything falls on the same 5 people.
Right.
And then they just get burned out.
Yeah. Right.
Many hands make light work. Take a turn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we have people that are involved in a lot of things. Coaches for sports teams, school board. We've had a couple of those guys. Sometimes, being a parent, I recognize when, those of you that have had teenage kids, you know what I'm talking about. They're involved in everything that there is, and it's draining as it is. And then you throw in this kind of thing, and sometimes it doesn't mix well. And like I said, in my case, I'm blessed that I have the group of family and friends, surrounding me, that we could make that all work. But everybody has something on their plate. It would be nice if we were full time, but the reality of it is we just cannot afford that. It just is. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Will not happen in my lifetime. At some point, I could almost see a countywide one department with multiple stations. They do that in other states, where there's an automatic response, and we do have some automatic stuff that we do with other departments, but You know, the possibility if there's a fire here where automatically trucks are coming from the north, trucks are coming from the south, where it just automatically happens,
Mm-hmm.
where it doesn't in most cases. Now we request it through that mutual aid box alarm system.
Right. So we have hit 8 o'clock, and I already cleared it with you that we can go over the time.
Sure.
And personally, I'm not even counting the first 15 minutes.
Right.
And I haven't seen anyone complain about the audio, which is because of the cat. I just want to make that clear. Um, so just so the viewers know, normally we would close this off right about now, but we're going to go a little bit further. Pat has, I think, 4 pages of notes there, and we probably only got to like one of them.
Right. Right.
I
Yeah,
mean, not the,
we're like the third line down, so we should
yeah,
be out of here by midnight.
yeah, right.
But I think we can make this work.
So
So
we,
I,
went- yeah, go
I
ahead.
do have another question from the gallery.
Okay.
Do any of the volunteers have fireproof clothes at home so they can
Ah,
head right straight to the fire
good question.
and not have to go to the station first? Yes, they do. Those are mostly our rural people, and they do respond directly to the scene more often than not. The only time they may not is either if they're already at the station when the call comes in, or if the station is on the way, you know, to wherever they're going. Um, the um, the other part of that is most of us have a second set of gear, and it's our old set. I have an old set. We keep it in the event that, you know, everything is maybe dirty, nasty, needs to be washed, cleaned, whatever. So my situation now is I work on the other side of that bridge. If there's a call that comes in, and the majority of our area is on that side of the bridge, um, it's 14 miles for me to drive around in my personal vehicle. I mean, we're realistically talking 15 minutes just to get to the station. Then I have to turn around and drive that 15 minutes back just to get to where I was. That's a
Right.
half an hour.
Right.
That's an eternity. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to respond right to scene. I'm going to get on my radio. I'm going to call the ones that are responding and explain to them what I'm seeing so that when they get on scene, they don't have to do that. They
Mm-hmm.
can jump out of the trucks and everybody can have an assignment and go after it. We do have a property owner, landowner, farmer that offered up a storage room in one of his buildings on his
Ah.
farm. So currently we do have one tender parked on that side of the
I
river.
was wondering.
On our phones we have a I'm not sure I should say the name or not, but
Yeah,
we have
a service.
we have a service that sends us. They don't send us information. It's an app that we use. Dispatch fills out the information, sends it on this app, and there's we can see a lot of things on that app. And one of those things, we were able to add a tab that indicates whether anybody is going to get that truck. So, for instance, if I'm at work and
Interesting.
I were going to respond, I can look at this app and I can see, oh, geez, nobody's getting that truck. I'm going to hit the tab and I'll say, I'm getting it. So that way everybody else can do the same. They can look at the phone and say, oh, Pat's getting that truck. We don't need to do it.
Yeah.
So that's another technology thing that, you know, that is helping us. And thank you to that landowner, that property owner, for allowing us to do that. Um, that that's huge. I mean, it's a water truck. Our water trucks hold. One is 3,000 gallons. The other one's 3,250.
Yeah.
Having that, you know, that's enough water that you know, even one person grass fire, that's going to go a long ways if
Yeah.
we can hit it, you know, from the road or from an area that we can get that truck to. Another question from my sister. I know you're a scuba diver. Has the department ever responded to a water rescue situation?
She's just setting you up for all the best questions.
She knows all of this stuff, and I'm gonna remind her that I'm the reason that she got her job, and if she doesn't watch it, I'm no, just messing around.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna edit that into its own little clip.
Right. So currently I'm the only diver on our department. There have been several over the years. Some have moved on to other areas, other departments. Some are retired from the department. I personally have responded to. To be honest, neither one of them were rescues at that point. They were recoveries. Thankfully, we, even as much water as we have around us, thankfully, I can only think of one that we were called to that was a water rescue service and our situation, and it ended up being one of our team members was in the river doing some kayaking, and the current was a little bit more than they were comfortable with. But the situation had resolved itself before we got there. So thankfully, we didn't need to do that. Our department does have ice rescue equipment. If someone were on a lake or a river during the wintertime and the ice breaks and they go into the water, assuming that they're at the top yet, we do have equipment and suits that we can wear that we can take out there to...
Yeah, the suits are, I mean, they're special. You almost cannot sink.
Correct. They're like PVC on the outside and neoprene on the inside. They float. You are not going to sink wearing those suits. They somewhat resemble a dry suit for diving, not exactly, but very similar to that. We've had we do training during the wintertime. We have another community member, rural community member that has a pond, and we've had several over the years that have offered up the use of their ponds during the wintertime. Many of them run aerators, and with the aerator running, it'll create an open water situation right above that aerator, and we have been graciously allowed to use their ponds for training. We have a rescue craft that is good in many situations. The one situation that it would not be good in is anything sharp, rocks or things like that. It would be a little vulnerable. But we are very well prepared. We have tremendous community support. I'm sort of blown away by the outpouring of support when we need something. It seems all we need to do is ask our community, and they have responded. So we do 2 fundraisers a year, one for EMS in May and one for Fire in October. Through the money that we raise during those events, that is what pays for this, I'll call it extra equipment, ice rescue equipment,
Silo rescue,
the grain rescue equipment.
Right.
We have that. A lot of this stuff we have never had to use in an actual situation. Somebody would say, well, why do you have it then? Why do we have fire trucks? I hope I never have to use that either.
Yeah.
But we got those.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things. I mean, you have to draw the line. Sometimes you can use something for a purpose that it wasn't originally intended for, but it works fine.
Sure. Yeah.
Using it that way,
right,
or in that manner. Sometimes you need to be good at figuring things out.
So
on the fly.
So these stories or anecdotes that you're sharing with me, I think remind me of I'm speaking a little bit out, well, let's say quite a bit out of ignorance, because I've never been on a career fire department. Um, I don't have that experience, but where I'm going is the diversity of things that the volunteer first responders out in the rural area, whether it's the cops, EMT, or the fire, the different things that you encounter, I'm gonna guess are much more diverse than what happens in the cities. Like in the cities, you can kind of, in general, you're gonna have your cars, you'll have your certain residences,
Right.
and so we have to solve these problems on our own.
Right.
The thing is, there's no one else who's gonna come in and help us. It's like
Right.
it's us or nobody.
The one time when that would happen, where we would need somebody to come in from the outside, would be like a hazmat situation. We just don't deal with that enough to feel that it's necessary to put through people through many hours of training and specialized equipment. It's quite honestly for the and I can only remember once when we used this service from another department. It's not a likely thing to happen. You had touched on a lot of the things that we respond to: fire, EMS, rescue, search and recovery, traffic crashes, searches, people searches. We have done that too. Lost persons.
Before you say it, I want to share my own story about, because I bet you it's on this list.
Okay.
So probably 8 years ago, was just on the department 1 or 2 years, and I went to my hometown, which is in a major urban area. And I'm not really sure why or how, but we took a tour of the local professional fire department, and the fire chief is the one that gave us the tour. I think maybe it was like something for my kids to do and touch the trucks or whatever. I don't really recall. But she heard that I was on the department. And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, I was such a small potato then and always. And she said, well, we're always trying to learn from other people. So what is something that you can teach me that's different about the rural service that we're not going to really have? And I'm like, man, I was new. I'd only probably been on 15 calls by that point, or maybe 20.
Right.
So I was like, we have Amish buggies. That's what we have. We have to deal with Amish buggy stuff. I mean, and she was like, well, what's an Amish buggy?
Right.
Like, oh my gosh, I got to explain it all now.
Yep.
And I'm just so, well, just imagine something that doesn't interact well with a semi truck.
Right. Or a car.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of a little bit what I mean by like unthought of things that some communities just would never have to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. The we haven't had too many, unforeseen or really abnormal. I have. There's another guy in the department. His name is Dean, and we once responded to a vehicle crash. Vehicle ended up in a small river. Everything ended up okay. I was driving the rig that night, and parked the rig literally on the bridge, and we started up the generator. We're shining lights off the side, and I can remember saying to him, "Take a good look at this, Dean. You are never going to see anything like this again. This is so bizarre. I have not seen anything like this." It was less than a year. I want to say it was like 5 months, 6 months. Was wintertime. Car going down the hill. Similar, not exactly the same. This vehicle ended up. I bet you could have drawn a line around that original placement of that car. And the second car landed in that same spot, only upside down.
In the same exact spot.
In the same exact spot. So again, I'm driving the rig and I'm pulling up on scene, And I already know it's coming. He's in the back seat, and he's like, "Sure, yep, take a good look at this. You're never gonna see this again."
Right.
Love you, Dean. You're awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll make sure that he gets to hear that.
Right.
Yeah. So what else is on your list there?
Okay. Let's see. Oh, a benefit of being on the fire service as long as I have. I was called up for jury duty last year.
Oh.
I was excused
Well, how about that?
because I had intimate knowledge and stuff that the general public doesn't know.
Sure.
And speaking of that, one of the things over the years that's kind of difficult in a small town, I can
Oh, right.
remember having had been at
See where
an
this is going.
incident, and my wife and I went to the local cafe to grab something to eat because she didn't know when I was going to be home, one of those deals. So we're sitting there casually, eating our meal, and there's people that are across and kind of behind me, and I can hear their conversation that they're having, and 90% of what they were discussing about this incident was completely false.
Yeah.
Was completely wrong. And, it's one of them things, as much as I wanted to correct them and set them straight, if for no other reason, just to make sure that incorrect information wasn't being perpetuated.
Yeah.
I can't talk about this stuff.
Right.
There's confidentiality. There are people that are involved. Things to consider are, what if it were you? Would you want me talking to people you may not even know about this unfortunate situation that you just went through? A lot of our discussion has covered a lot of this. I want to mention again that I'm not unique. I'm not special. In the things that I've seen, sometimes horrific. I'm not the only one that has experienced these things. There are other departments with major highways that go through their areas. They certainly see a lot more, more in quantity, horrendous things than I do. So, I don't want any of this to sound like, some sort of glory hound thing going on.
I'm sure that was the first thing on everyone's mind as they've watched you for the last hour and a half. That, oh yeah, this guy, he likes to brag.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big shot. Yeah, no, I as long as I've been doing this, I had mentioned before, I think it's important for all the new department members and some that maybe just don't know, that have been there for a while. I know that I have said this to people on our department. I want everybody to know what I know. I'm not always going to be here. I mean, it in one way or another, through old age, retirement, disability, or death. I know that I know things that are valuable to my team members, and I really feel strongly that they need to know, even if they never have to use it. They need to know.
Right.
One thing that I had written down here is I sometimes wonder what some of the new people think about me. I intentionally don't warm up too quickly. I have seen a lot of people come and go. Some of them applied, were offered a position as volunteer, and then they didn't show up at all. So I sometimes intentionally don't interact with the new people a lot. I'm trying to feel them out. Are they still going to be here at the end of the meeting, or are they going to bail on us and we never see them again? Because I have seen that.
That's something you wrote down?
It is actually.
Oh, okay.
I did write that down.
All right.
If there is anybody that is interested in becoming a
Wait,
volunteer,
wait. So was
what?
that like a warning? So like you wanted all future guys to know why you're not talking with them? It's
Well,
because they
I
should
yeah,
know.
maybe.
Okay.
Maybe,
All right.
you know, I'm not the big bad wolf. I mean,
Okay. Just give
I
you some time.
right,
Just give you some
right.
time, and he'll smile at you.
Show up,
Maybe. Yeah. Sure.
show up, do what you have told us that you wanted to do. Um, it really is disheartening to think that we have some new people that are going to join, and everything is set into motion, put into place, and they show up for one meeting and we never see them again, or they move away from town 15 days later. Well,
Hmm.
that's not helping us.
Right. Yeah.
We need people that are going to be committed. We will give you all the tools necessary. We will, train you. You went through it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not it's not entirely a thankless job. Um, we don't get as many. Sometimes we don't know the outcomes of situations,
Right.
especially with EMS. But a lot of times we do. We get letters sometimes from people whose lives were, changed forever, and um, had enough of a positive experience that they wanted to thank us, for what we did. Um, is is menial as that may sound, that goes a long way to keep us excited about what we do. It can wear you down. Remember, there's a hamster wheel
Yeah.
spinning up
Right.
there, and
So
eventually that thing gets tired.
right. So let's say you had a guy who thought he could only be on. It's totally just throwing out a time frame. 2 years. Should
Yep.
they? Should they still sign on?
Sure. I mean, every situation's going to be a little bit different. We have had many. We have had many. I think we've had 3 guys that have been on our department right out of high school, and actually, 2 of the 3 are actually still on full-time fire departments. So they stayed with us, went through the training. A lot of the training is covered, through funding. They, boy, I don't know how I ended up with that.
Should have
So
confiscated his phone
they
before we started.
yeah, I should just give it to you. Um, they I just saw part of the message, and actually I'll address that in a minute. They were able to, I think in all of their cases, I think they were able to obtain full-time employment because of their experience with us. That's not ideal. We have a couple of guys now. One of them is going through paramedic school, and he's doing quite well. He's become valuable member of our EMS group. But I think, unless he can obtain employment within a reasonable driving distance, the reality is we may lose him at some point.
Right.
And another one of the young men that's with us is going through or intends to go through fire training and would like to become a hotshot. And for those of you that don't know what a hotshot is, it's basically a dedicated wildland firefighter, and most likely out west, mountainous type stuff. So here's a question. I'm sure you guys all experience PTSD in one form or another from the traumatic situations you encounter. How do you handle that, and or does the city provide any kind of care? There are. I'll start with the back side of that. The care part. Yes, there are organizations in place through our medical facility is one of them. Firefighter groups. We have what we call a critical incident stress debriefing, and there's all kinds of acronyms for other groups that I could bore you to death, and I probably wouldn't remember half of them anyway. But the end of the day, what it is people that are in the same business as us and go through the same things that we go through, and a lot of times just being able to talk to those people because they are professionals in this. We can talk to them where we can't go home and share it with our family members or our friends. And I think that, like I said, a lot of times my wife, she can tell right away if I'm going through something tough, and I have definitely experienced those things. I will say that this is one of the things that's on my list, and I was trying to recall in the 30-some years how many sleepless nights I had because of an incident. And there were really only 2 incidents that I can recall that I had trouble sleeping. I have seen plenty of bad things. I've seen plenty of fatalities, been right in the middle of it and involved with, whatever we needed to do to make things go the way they should. But with these 2 in particular, they were both people that I knew. One of them was a child. I know their families.
Before you go further, just
Yeah,
remember that just to remember the guardrails I mentioned at the beginning.
right.
As long as you feel like you're within them.
Yeah. No, and that's really as far as I was going to go there.
Okay.
Other than just addressing the sleepless night thing.
Sure. Yeah.
That it really only lasted through. I attended their services, and that was really it. I mean, I knew all along that in both situations there was nothing I could do, nothing that would change it. So do I have PTSD? I don't, probably. I'm sure there's some professional somewhere that would say, "Oh my God, that guy needs help." That's why Tony's here.
Did I mention the whiskey?
Yeah. We can do a little therapy there.
So, a long time ago now, I was a semi-truck driver over the road, and there are still times. So that was 20 years ago now. I'm just doing quick math. There are still times where I'll be driving down something and I'll look and I'll see a tree in the right spot or a rock or whatever, and I will see in my mind's eye a time when I almost died in that truck. Right.
A trigger.
Yeah. So you've got 30 years on. I imagine like that happens to you all the time. 10 years for me, not as much, but it still does.
It does. I definitely have those moments where a sight, a sound, a smell, all of a sudden I'm thinking about something that I thought was long gone from my memory bank. Right. There it is, Yeah. And there's my PTSD diagnosis, I guess. I'm not sure. But the one thing that I would say is that it doesn't bother me in a negative way. I know, at least I think I know how to handle it. And it's not causing me any sleepless nights or, any issues that way. I don't think I have anger issues. Maybe I do. Do I?
We will consult your wife.
Right? Yeah. No, I think she would tell you that if anything, maybe I'm too relaxed.
Yeah. So we've hit 8:30.
Right.
I think we should wrap it up within 15 minutes. So
okay.
He just so everyone knows he's only on the first page of his notes.
Right. There's 2 more. What are we going to talk about in 10 minutes?
So pick out the bigger ones.
Ironically, the very next thing on my list here is that I wanted everybody to know that I excel at the Midwest Goodbye. Do you know what the Midwest Goodbye is? That's where we can talk for hours about nothing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I fully expect that I'm going to end this broadcast and then we're still going to talk.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably.
That wasn't the Midwest Goodbye wasn't in your notes, was it?
Yeah, it is. It's right there.
Okay.
I excel at the Midwest Goodbye.
Sure.
Charlie
that's what it
Barron's.
says. I believe that's what it says.
Right.
If you tell me it does.
It does. It does right there.
Yeah.
We can translate for you later. Looks like I have another question.
So while he's checking his phone, we if anyone has questions or comments, now would be a good time to put them in the chat if you're not already sending them to Pat. There's no way for me to know who's watching, so unless like I can't ask you, you're gonna have to be proactive and saying something.
Yeah.
So
there are some folks. I have a cousin. Her name is Anna, and her husband, my brother cousin, and this is where we cue the banjos for the listeners that don't have a clue what I'm talking about.
I wasn't gonna say anything except for in the big city.
Cousin because he's married to my cousin, but brother because it's a brotherhood and sisterhood. So shout out to Frank. Gosh, I think I think I've hit on just about everything here. The one thing that I didn't say was a disclaimer that everything that I've said and talked about here is my viewpoint and my viewpoint alone. It doesn't necessarily include or imply that it's the viewpoint of the department that I'm on. What I do. People ask me why I do what I do. I just want to be a good person. That's I think my mom and dad would smile if they heard me say that, because that's who they raised, not only me but all of my siblings. They wanted to raise good human beings, and I'd like to think they did a pretty good job. So there it is.
But did you get a shirt?
I don't have a shirt like that, but I think I need one like that.
Yeah. Father's Day. Well earned.
Right?
Yeah. So we need volunteers in a lot of things. I think that it's our era where it's not just the fire department. It's you can't find volunteers for anything really. Like they're just kind of going away. But
right.
To return to a previous theme, like out here, if people don't volunteer for these things, people, when you need them, there won't be people. Like
right.
There's a real causal connection, and just take a turn.
Yeah. We don't. We definitely don't get jammed up with too many people. There are places. I've heard of these anomalies happening where they have people knocking down the door that want to be part of this, and they're actually turning people away. And I keep on telling them to move here.
Crazy.
Yeah, we have never had that situation. And to be completely honest, there are times when I think that my time is done, my usefulness is done. Some of that is maybe me just needing a break. I have been going on more fishing trips lately. But being a volunteer is not for everyone. We have had some really good people that, there's a call, there's a bad situation, and something that makes them decide that that they don't want to do it anymore or can't do it anymore.
Right.
And I respect that. I get that. I'm not judging anybody. It's not an easy job. My first fatality that I went to was someone that I knew, and I was the only one there that knew them. One of the department members had been on for a while, was a family friend, was a friend of one of my uncles. He knew me when I was a baby, long before I knew him. He took me for a walk down the road. I cried like a baby. That was I can talk about it comfortably today because, quite honestly, I don't care what anybody thinks. That's part of being comfortable with what you're doing, realizing that we are human beings, that we do have feelings. We're not the TV shows. They may portray full-time departments a lot closer, but that's not what happens out here in the real world. He took me for a walk down the road, and I told him, I said, I don't think I could do this anymore. You know, I had probably been on, I was an officer already then, I was a lieutenant. And I told him, I said, I don't think I can do this. And he said, we need you. Remember, this is the group of guys that are in their 60s. And I was, you know, geez, a third of their age, most of them. And they knew what I know now, that we need young people, we need new people, we need people to be involved. And he told me, he said, you're gonna struggle with this for a little bit, but he said eventually it will get better. But he said, the one thing that I want you to know is that quitting being a firefighter, being a volunteer, is not going to make what's in your head go away. And I took a couple of weeks. I didn't go on any calls, if there were any. Took me a little bit to get back in the swing of things. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how right he was, that, you know, just simply stepping back away from doing what I was doing, that wasn't going to put these things out of my mind. And maybe the best way to process and deal with what had happened was to, you know, try and make it better, you know, try and help other people in bad situations. You know, the reality is, particularly with car accidents, things of that nature, we don't necessarily know the outcome of those people. Sometimes we do, but you know, it's tough. It can wear on you, but you hang on to those winning moments. You know, sometimes just driving the fire truck through the parade,
Sure.
you know, and you see how excited the little kids are to see you. We do fire safety at the schools. I'm not really involved with that much anymore. But when I was, you know, I mean, you are their hero, at least for that day. You know, it brings the humanity back to it a little bit. And, you know, eventually you think, maybe this isn't so bad.
Right.
You know, I can do this. I can keep on going. If we had more than enough people knocking down our doors where we were turning qualified candidates away, I would likely step back. There are other things I can still do. We have an auxiliary that supports us outside of the incidents, in the way of, you know, bringing us sandwiches and food and, you know, really anything that we ask them for. And they have, you know, many times. So, yeah.
All right. So, on a lighter note, maybe, I don't know, we did say that possibly you might share a story incident that might, you know,
Well,
be fun to share.
yeah,
And we never really did that, I don't think.
I did the one with the two cars in the river,
Right.
in the exact same spot. That one was kind of a lighthearted, funny one. Probably one of the most bizarre things I had ever seen happen. And I'm a farm kid, so some of you, if you're not familiar with farm equipment, you may not understand this one. there was a tractor driving down the road, and a guy with a pickup came up behind him. The tractor was pulling a disc. The farmer was pulling a disc, and the guy in the pickup truck had fallen asleep, and he literally hit the back end of the disc at full speed. It broke the drawbar on the tractor, shoved the disc into the tractor tires, and this is just my theory of what happened here, is that the front end of the disc, because tractor tires had slices in them, so I know that the disc hit the tractor. The front of the disc went up, and somehow when that disc was in the air doing a backflip, the pickup truck also did a backflip. The pickup truck ended up upside down on the road with the cab smashed right down to the seat and the disc on top of that. And the guy that was driving the truck had several guardian angels that were watching over him that day. He ended up in the floor space down where you would have your feet when you're operating that truck. That's where he was. Guy completely fine. Just felt terrible that he had fallen asleep and ran into the back end of this tractor.
Right.
But talk about bizarre. Both the pickup truck and the disc ended up upside down with the pickup truck underneath the disc. Try and wrap your head around that.
Yeah.
I when I was making notes of things that we could talk about or discuss, that was one of the things that popped in my head, and I'm like, that is the most bizarre thing that I have seen, that certainly that I can share.
Right. A lot of the calls that I went on had a certain rhythm. Of course, there's the adrenaline rush. Well, there's the moment first when the call comes in at your house, right?
Right.
And you hear the little snippet, and then you're like running around trying to get your crap together.
Right.
Go to the bathroom first.
Right.
Yeah, and
Rule
then
number one.
Yeah. Get there, everyone's kind of rushing to go get there, and anyway, then you're flying out as fast as you can, and it's chaos or whatever, but I'm leaving out some steps. But then you get to the part where things start winding down. And then that's when everyone assumes they're man mode, and they're like, so what the hell do you think happened here?
Yeah.
And you just try to figure it out. Like, how did this happen? And like, that was the rhythm of like probably 90% of the calls. It's like,
Right.
I have no idea how, and I viewed that as like a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Just try to figure out like.
I certainly didn't have answers for everything that I had seen. Some things I just, it was your time or whatever. But, I really have gotten pretty good at, particularly traffic type incidents,
Sure.
looking at, and there's a lot of telltale signs. There's black marks, there's disturbed gravel, there's chunks of rust and sand on the road that could indicate, we all have those things on our vehicles. If you live in rural central Wisconsin, you have mud and rust and dirt and stuff in places that you can't see. You think that you clean your car good? Just get it in a car crash, and I guarantee you I'm going to find rust and dirt. So there's a lot of indicators. Okay, this is where initial impact happened. Okay, now we can see the skid marks and the rotation of the tires. And okay, now there's a space in the ditch where there isn't anything, but there's a divot way back there. Okay, so the car went airborne, skipped over all of this, planted right there, popped a divot, and that's where it began its roll. And I could go on and on and on and on, and sometimes I think I enjoy this stuff too much, and that's probably why I'm still here. But
well, we're glad that you're here. I think that all the viewers will agree that we're glad that's the Greenwood area district, which is not just Greenwood. Has had you for 30 years. It's been an asset, and I'm sure that having heard you speak at length, that everyone will agree that even if they don't know you, that is the case. So
yeah,
I thank you for being on this podcast. Do you want to say anything else, because we're in the wind down now?
No, just all of my friends and family and the people that know me, thank you for your support. I love all of you guys. You know, keeping things normal as much as possible.
Sure.
Sometimes not easy, but you know, we do the best that we can with what we have to work with, and you know, in that respect, I am tremendously blessed to have the group of people that surround me. You know, and I'm thankful for that every day.
So yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's the community thing, right? And
Right.
here it matters in a different way than in other places.
Yeah.
Um, if ever in the future you feel like you got something you want to come back and talk about,
Sure.
we will definitely make it happen. So, if you could just not talk for a couple minutes while I end this. Normally, what I would do is I would switch to a scene where it's just me, but the tech stuff has got me really nervous right now, and you can't see it, but the cat is here. The cat has arrived. The cat which caused all of my calamities. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the wrap up. It's just going to be me talking for a minute, and just ignore the guy on the other side of the screen. So my name's Anthony Horvath. I'm the host of the Guten Cast. I have a website, gutenbookpress.com. We sell books. I publish books. I write books about everything. I mean, if you have an imagination, we probably have published a book about it in some way, although not about the fire department that I'm aware of. So that's why I'm not featuring any books. This is a outlet for me to talk about things that interest me, and it can be kind of anything. We don't usually talk about politics. You can go on Joe Rogan and hear politics. You can go many other places and hear about whatever's going on in the world that day. And trust me, I have opinions about those things. Don't misunderstand me. I have many, many opinions, but I just feel like sometimes it's just good to have conversations about things. And since nobody else is, that's what I'm going to do. So if you like that, I hope you will like, subscribe, and share. And I appreciate you hanging in there, especially those who have been with me from the very beginning. You could have spent your time in any number of ways, but you spent it with us. And I really appreciate that. So now I'm going to go to the thing of doom here and say goodbye.